The spring equinox, just 2 weeks away, March 20th, and the dreaded daylight savings time change arrives tomorrow night. In our weather today, a frontal system moves through the southern Great Lakes and Midwest, while another strong, compact Pacific weather system crosses the southern Rockies, bringing dust storms once again to El Paso. Here is something a little bit different, satellite imagery with satellite-derived winds. This kind of data does go into the forecast models. Red is upper troposphere, blue is mid-troposphere, and yellow is in the lower levels. These satellites are an enormous source of good forecast information, and we're depending on those more than ever these days. Let's look at the weather around the country and size things up. There's our frontal wave across Illinois, cold front extending into Oklahoma City to Dalhart and into the Colorado Rockies. And in the southwest, another strong weather system moving through New Mexico, blowing dust being picked up along this cold front. Further to the west, a mix of rain and snow across Arizona as a cold core low crosses the state. Checking out the weather in the northeastern U.S., there's our wave moving through Illinois. Quite a dry slot through that area, but it appears there is some cold core convection just to the west of that low pressure area. Highs today ranged from the 20s in New England to the 50s in Virginia and Chesapeake Bay. Winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories continue for northern Maine. Those expire at 7 p.m. They're expecting about 3 to 6 inches of snow, mostly north of Bangor. Wind advisories all across the northeastern U.S., from New England to eastern New York, New Jersey, Delaware. Northwest winds gusting to 55 miles an hour and even up to 60 miles an hour in parts of western Massachusetts. Snowfall totals for the season are out now, and you can see that many areas have fallen short of typical winter totals. But a few exceptions, like Erie, Bluefield, West Virginia, we saw multiple blizzard warnings out there this winter. Cincinnati, almost 30 inches, and the Carolinas, a lot of snow with that one system back in late January. However, New York City, Philadelphia getting about half the normal snow. Washington, D.C. about 3/4, the same for Boston, Portland, and Bangor. In the Great Lakes, looking pretty good. Highs were mostly in the 30s, 40s across the Midwest, but we've got this area of precipitation moving eastward across northern Indiana, Michigan, and that will be heading into Ohio tonight. You can see that they're looking for about 1 to 2 inches across Toledo, Cleveland, and western Pennsylvania tonight. Precipitation starting to end further west around Illinois, Wisconsin. We could see lows down to 0 in northern Wisconsin, teens in the Green Bay area westward, and in some areas we may see refreezing of precipitation on sidewalks and roads, so be careful out there tonight. In the southeastern region, very little to talk about really. Highs today ranged from the 50s and lower 60s in the Piedmont region, 70s across the eastern Gulf Coast area and into Florida, and you can see that skies are fairly clear. In the south central U.S., another warm day. Some cold air is filtering south, but some rather mild temperatures. Further south, lots of 80s across most of Texas. We were looking for 85 at San Antonio, 82 at Dallas, and 80 at Houston. Further to the west, we get into some of that cooler air. The cold front is dry, but it's right out here. And, of course, as you go west of that front, things rapidly get cooler. We've got 40s and 50s out there on the higher terrain and some 30s in parts of the Four Corners area. The Storm Prediction Center has issued a marginal risk for the Fort Worth, Abilene, Wichita Falls triangle for later tonight. There could be isolated large hail. Can't really see what's going on here on the satellite imagery, so we'll switch over to the current surface map, and this will show you a little bit better what's going on. The first thing that you should look at is the moisture. 50s and 60s dew points running about like this, and the dry line just west of I-35. You can see the west winds back here and dew points in the 20s and 30s. And we know that that is a dry line because that's corresponding to the thermal axis. It's very warm back there. Temperatures well up into the 80s. And as we go further west, it does drop off a little bit. This could be part of the cold front, but looking at the previous charts and seeing that El Paso is still 71, I would put that cold front further west. And you can see that rapid drop-off right there, down to 62 at Deming and 37 at Lordsburg. So quite a change as you go west of that cold front. So I'll just cut to the chase here, show you the theta E fields. This is kind of where we're finding the best parcels given equal conditions aloft. So this is not really corresponding to Cape, but in a local area where there's not much change aloft, this will pretty much tell you where your best parcels are. So this is where we're at right now. The cold air filtering south, drier air also, that's having some effect. But going into the evening, we see some of it surging to the northwest, and you can kind of make out the actual cold front up to the north, the Canadian front sinking south, and that produces a triple point right in this area, the dry line, the front. So this is an area where we're going to look for the possibility of convection. Although it is nighttime, that's a negative factor, but there are some indications we're going to see precip breaking out. And we go into the hours after midnight, that area of interest right there, theta E axis, impinging on that frontal zone right there, just west of Waco. And we could also see some showers and storms developing elsewhere along that cold front. So that right there gives you a pretty good idea of where to look for precipitation. And of course, you can go right to the precipitation forecast and see where the model is breaking it out. And it goes dry all the way through midnight. Now we've got some cells breaking out there around Eastland to Abilene around 2 in the morning. And there's a little bit of organization, maybe a little bit elevated. Let me take a look at a sounding. Yeah, those are going to be somewhat elevated. See, the higher theta E's are aloft. The parcels down near the surface, a little bit too dry to support convection. So these are going to be elevated storms rooted at about 1 kilometer. So even though we have this curvature here, that's not really going to mean very much. So yeah, where are we? Heading towards dawn, moving into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, little clusters of showers moving northeast. And we should probably see a lot of that reforming out in this area as heating begins developing for Saturday. I'll just give you the model forecast on that. There we go. There's the nighttime convection, and then tomorrow morning you can see cells breaking out from Tyler to El Dorado, Shreveport down to Jackson, and gradually everything starts shifting to the east tomorrow night, and we get that cold air advection flowing in the wake. A little bit of a calm ahead right there with that upper level low. And I don't know if you all noticed that around El Paso, dust breaking out already. There it is at the very end, big plumes of dust coming off these dry lake beds and wherever there's loose soil. So it is spreading out across much of far west Texas and southern New Mexico. We have blowing dust advisories this afternoon and early evening that includes southern New Mexico from Deming to Alamogordo, Las Cruces, and we have wind advisories all across Carlsbad, Ruidoso, and Truth or Consequences. And yeah, you'll probably hear a lawn tractor out there. It is getting to be about that season. We're cutting the grass out here. Probably hard to believe for people in Maine and New York. But we've really not had much of a winter here. Anyway, further north, yeah, it looks like the back edge of a front moving through the Panhandles area. We do have a winter storm warning into Saturday morning across much of northeastern New Mexico. Yeah, there's a little frontal boundary. This winter storm warning runs from about Las Vegas to Dalhart, Boise City, and over towards Trinidad and Walsenburg. Looks like they've expanded that a couple of counties eastward. But within this area, they're looking for up to 10 inches of snow with higher amounts in the Sangre de Cristos. Winter weather advisory for most of the remaining Texas-Oklahoma panhandles, including Amarillo, Pampa, Guymon, and Canadian, 1 to 5 inches of snow tomorrow. And this is the latest predictions, 4 to 6 inches into Dumas and 3 into Pampa, or Pampers, as Chaser Roger Edwards used to say. And if you're in eastern Oklahoma, Skywarn Storm Spotter training begins next week. That will culminate with a session in Tulsa next Saturday. So check that out. Those are always good places to learn about severe weather and connect with other people in your community. And checking out the weather across the northern plains, the calm ahead, crossing through Iowa, but precipitation is declining as drier air moves in. Temperatures this afternoon ranged from the 30s and 40s across the Great Plains, and we've got 20s across Wyoming. Up there in the higher terrain, they've had fresh snow, and down to the south, trouble coming in from the Four Corners region. And there it is. Behold, a fresh Pacific system crossing Arizona. The vortex center just north of Phoenix. A meager dry slot coming in from Ajo into Casa Grande, and the warm conveyor belt zone across Benson, Tucson into Safford. Across the Rockies, temperatures ranged from the 20s in central Wyoming to the 40s and 50s in the Colorado valleys. We have a mix of winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories in the higher terrain of the Rockies, mostly above 8,000 feet. Very few towns affected. We're basically just looking at the skiing towns like Breckenridge, Aspen. There could be 2 inches into tonight. Also, the mountains of Utah, where we have cooler air aloft, more instability. They're in a winter storm warning into early evening, mostly above 8,000 feet. They could see 1 to 3 inches of snow. And you saw that strong Pacific system crossing Arizona. Winter weather advisory tonight and overnight along the higher terrain, the continental divide of New Mexico from about Silver City to Zuni and Gallup. That includes part of Interstate 40. We could see 2 to 5 inches of snow going into tonight with about a foot above 8,500 feet. In Arizona, similar problems. We have a winter storm warning tonight and overnight on the Mogollon Rim. From about Rainbow City and Show Low to Flagstaff, above 5,000 feet, we could see accumulations as low as 4,000 feet. Flagstaff looking for about 10 inches with 7 inches at Williams and 3 inches at Payson. Showers have swept through Phoenix this afternoon, bringing some relief from the drought weather. And Nevada looking kind of quiet there. Wind advisory continues for Tonopah. Looks like the winds have died down to 16 knots, but they were forecasting gusts up to 45 miles an hour through this evening. In California, things are finally looking a little bit quiet there off of the coast. Temperatures today in California on the cool side, 50s and 60s, with slightly higher readings in the lower deserts. Frost advisories have been issued for parts of the Inland Empire, including Murrieta, Paris, Hemet, and Yucaipa. Temperatures will be down to freezing. Freeze watch for the Bakersfield area, not the city itself, but the outlying areas. Temperatures will be in the lower 30s. We've seen frost advisories in parts of the coastal regions of Central California and up there in the northwest around Ukiah, Fort Bragg, Laytonville. Temperatures also down near freezing. And cool conditions in the northwestern region, mostly 40s and 50s. We were looking for 53 at Seattle, 57 at Portland. High wind watch for Sunday and Monday out there in Glacier National Park, out towards Choteau, Browning, Cut Bank, and Shelby. Those winds will be up to 70 miles an hour out of the southwest. We're talking about gusts, not sustained winds. And we will be heading into a very wet period for next week, which you will see shortly. Okay, and we head out into the Pacific, and you don't have to go too far to find a front. So that's going to be about 500 miles off of Oregon. Pretty well-developed frontal system with a 970 millibar low in the Gulf of Alaska. We've had a pretty strong pressure gradient across the Alaska Panhandle. It was windy with 75-mile-an-hour winds in the far south part of the Panhandle, 58 miles an hour at Annette, 47 on the docks at Ketchikan, and 37 at Sitka. We do have a winter storm warning. In fact, I think that's actually expired. Haines and Skagway, they're being overrun by warm air, so that's probably been dropped, but they were expecting 8 inches earlier. We've got blizzard warnings at Valdez, up at Thompson Pass, and looking a little bit better out there in the western part of Alaska. They had winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories for at least 2 weeks, and those have finally shut down. Heading into Canada itself, blizzard warning along the Dempster Highway. We've got snowfall warnings from Watson Lake to Fort Liard, up to 4 inches of snow expected there. Wind warnings have shifted down towards Prince Rupert. They're looking for gusts up to 70 miles an hour. And as you go south into Vancouver and western Vancouver Island, we have rainfall warnings. There could be up to 3 inches of rain going into this weekend. The prairies, under the effects of clippers moving through, so rather dry. But as you can see, it's quite stormy out there in Quebec. We have a mix of rainfall warnings and snowfall warnings. The dividing line is pretty much right in here. Snowfall warnings up there in the main part of Quebec, and along the St. Lawrence Seaway down into the Maritimes, we've got rainfall warnings. I don't think I saw anything for New Brunswick, but I can definitely see snow coming down there. Further to the west, warm conveyor belt driving that warmer air north, and we do have rainfall warnings out there in the southeastern part of Newfoundland. Okay, we'll take a quick look at the Q vectors, and we see quite a bit of energy out there across the southern Rockies. There's the upper level low at 500 millibars across Show Low and Holbrook, ridging, building in across the Pacific Northwest. And let's go into tonight and just look very quickly where everything's going. Upper level ascent spreading across much of Texas into tomorrow morning. And of course, that will progress rapidly eastward by tomorrow evening, moving into the Arklatex and northern Mississippi. So that'll be our main support for instability. Of course, remember that storms are not triggered by upper level ascent, but the upper level ascent makes a very favorable environment, gets those lapse rates geared up, and promotes a better Cape value for storms. Another little trough shortwave coming through southern Arizona for tomorrow night, and that'll rotate around the base and pretty much disappear. So we'll mostly be dealing with that vortex right there across the southeast into Sunday and Monday, and another big cutoff low coming into California for Tuesday and Wednesday. That'll have similar effects across the southern Rockies, and that heads out into Texas for Wednesday and out into the southeastern U.S., and this looks like a rather big one for Thursday. A large area of ascent across California, Nevada, the southwest, and this is a negatively tilted trough, very strong, a lot of lift across the Four Corners area, and that appears that will rotate into the central U.S. rather than coming into Texas and Oklahoma. There will be effects down south, but it appears most of the energy is heading up into this area here. So there's the potential for severe weather, but at this time we don't know if the thermodynamics are going to be in phase with the upper level lift, or we don't know how much moisture is going to be heading north. However, very likely very strong warm advection, so I'd expect at least it should be warm into the Great Lakes area. And at the end of the period, another trough descending into Texas. So once again, we could be looking at severe weather down south. And this is getting into the middle of March, so we'll just have to check back in on this for next week. So let us go ahead and look at that forecast, starting with the current map and going into tonight. We are going to be looking for those storms to develop along that cold front, and as they cross to the northeast, they will become elevated. Snow continues across the northern panhandles. That will start shutting down towards afternoon, and by evening, the maps are looking like this. Showers and storms from the Arklatex into central Mississippi and southern Alabama. Parts of northern New England go from cold to bitter cold We're looking for highs in the teens up there across northern Maine, 20s from Bangor to Burlington, even into the Adirondacks and Syracuse. It will be struggling to get above 30. It will remain below freezing across much of Vermont. Even the higher elevations of New York and Binghamton into Erie will stay below freezing. Oklahoma up there getting some of that wraparound precipitation and the snow shutting down as mentioned earlier. And in the southwestern U.S., the deserts begin warming back up into the 70s, looking for 68 at Phoenix for tomorrow. Going into Saturday night, rain spreads into the southeastern U.S., some thunderstorms within that, and you can see a couple waves along that frontal boundary. For Sunday, the northeastern U.S. continues to hang on to 20s and 30s, supporting this snow with this fast-moving wave coming out of Ontario. In the southeast, widespread showers and storms along this frontal boundary from the Carolinas into northern Florida. An atmospheric river will be developing through that region. IVT is about 600 to 700, and SPC has a marginal risk across that same area. Some isolated tornado potential with downburst winds also a possibility. This will also be the warmest day of the week in southern Florida. Highs will rise into the mid-80s, up to 86 at Miami, 85 at Sebring, and 87 at West Palm Beach. Across the central U.S., cool, 50s and 60s from Texas all the way to North Dakota, even the lower Rio Grande Valley only rising into the mid-70s. One last day of warm weather for California before things get cool again for the work week. A lot of California should see low to mid-70s, and another Pacific weather system takes aim on Washington and Oregon. Then we go into Monday. And you probably saw this big change up there in North Dakota. More cold air coming south. In the central U.S., a warm-up as downslope flow gets established. 60s all the way into Wisconsin. California starting to get lashed by some of this rain from a cutoff low offshore. We're going to be seeing some scattered showers inland, and this rain will progress down the coast into Monday evening. Then we go into Tuesday, cold air invading much of the north-central U.S., highs in the 30s across North Dakota, and in the 20s around Pembina up near the Manitoba border. Rain spreads across Arizona on Tuesday. Snow returns to the Mogollon Rim. Snow levels probably around 5,000, much like today. Large increase in rain across the Pacific Northwest. Looks like snow levels there probably about 3,000 to 4,000 in the Cascades. Extensive snows will develop in northern Idaho and Montana. Then for Wednesday, we see a big warm-up in Texas as the warm sector returns. Low 80s in Dallas, mid-80s for San Antonio and Austin. Another burst of cold air coming in behind the secluded front. And it begins to get quite stormy in the western U.S. as that next weather system, that large trough we looked at, moves inland. Looks like an absolute mess west of the Rockies for Thursday. Snow levels probably about 4,000, so Salt Lake City, Tonopah, they all could see a mix of rain and snow or all snow. And once again, the Mogollon Rim getting snow for Thursday. And this is very interesting. We go up to later on Friday, the GFS trying to go for a 970 millibar low, which is close to all-time record lows. I'll have to look at the exact numbers. I'm going to try to compile that and show that to you guys to kind of show you where the all-time minimums are. There could be severe weather in parts of the Midwest with that polar front jet, the intersection of moisture, so we're going to have to watch this area late next week. Possibility of blizzard conditions on the backside, and gradually everything will shift up into the northern plains and into Ontario for Saturday, so at least it'll be out of the area pretty quickly. And this just came across within the past hour. Suspension of some radiosonde launches at Albany and Gray in Maine. So apparently this is due to staffing. We know the story with that, so that's really too bad. Hopefully this is not going to be the start of system-wide problems. In any case, we'll just leave it at that. All right, hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. I want to thank our new Patreon supporter, Debo. Thank you very much for stepping up and helping to keep this program going. Okay, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you back here Monday for the supporters and Wednesday for everybody else. Have a great one, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. And a little tidbit for those of you who hang around and watch these things, the gray, that's relative humidity above 70%. And you might notice some bluish tinge right here. That's where I've highlighted areas of high mixing ratio or high dew point. So they're a little bit different, but you can kind of combine them. The blue, you can visualize the extent of the tropical air. The gray, of course, that does not mean tropical air. That means cloud cover. So you're seeing a little bit of each on these graphics. And of course, the colored areas, that's going to be your wind speed. All right, have a great weekend.